Welcome to Life Stories, where sometimes the most powerful moments begin in the places we were never meant to be. Imagine being sent to the garage on Thanksgiving, not because there wasn't room at the table, but because someone decided you didn't deserve a seat. Not even your children were spared. No second helpings. No warmth. Just silence, cold air, and the sound of dignity trying not to crack. But what if that exile, that insult, became the spark that changed everything? Today's story is about a woman who stopped shrinking, a mother who turned humiliation into fuel, and a family that redefined what it means to belong. It's raw, it's emotional, and it just might shift the way you see your own worth. Let's step into the quiet, into the cold, and see what happened next. The turkey was still warm when Brielle noticed the silence. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, the kind that hums in your bones, the kind that tells you, you're not supposed to be here. She stood at the edge of the living room, clutching a foil-covered dish of sweet potato pie, her daughter Luna still holding on to the hem of her coat, her son Jaden trailing behind with cautious eyes. Brielle had driven 45 minutes through icy November air to reach her sister's gated home in Westbrook Hills, where even the holiday wreaths looked like they came with a price tag and a warning not to touch. She had promised herself she wouldn't come back this year. But Luna had asked about Grandma. Jaden, always careful not to hope for too much, had said nothing at all. That was worse. So Brielle ironed her best thrifted dress, braided Luna's hair with practiced tenderness, and baked the pie with the last of the brown sugar. She told herself it was for her kids, but part of her, the part that still whispered maybe this year will be different, wanted to be seen. Harper, her sister, didn't look up when she walked in. No one did. Conversations continued. Laughter rippled from the kitchen. The scent of sage stuffing and rosemary turkey filled the house, but not a single hand reached out to take her coat. Not a single voice said, "Welcome." Carter, Harper's husband, passed her with a tumbler of whiskey, barely pausing. "Hey, Bree," he said, using the nickname he knew she hated. "Kids look bigger." "Yeah," she replied, but he was already gone, swallowed by the golden glow of people who fit. In the corner, her mother Diane sat sipping Chardonnay, watching Harper's children perform a well-rehearsed dance number in matching sweaters. Brielle approached hesitantly. "Hi, Mom." Diane blinked, half-smiled. "Oh, you look tired." And there it was, that velvet-draped judgment, the one that said, "You don't quite measure up." Brielle placed the pie on the marble counter and tried to steady her breath. Luna whispered, "Can I give Grandma the pie?" Brielle nodded. The girl walked over, holding it like it was made of gold leaf. Diane barely glanced at it. "Sweet potato? How quaint." Brielle looked around. No chairs, no table setting for them. Just standing space. Just space, not place. Then Harper emerged from the kitchen holding a stack of paper plates. Her dress was immaculate. Her lipstick didn't dare smudge. "We're a little short on room," she said loudly. "So I set something up for you guys. In the garage." Brielle almost laughed. She thought it was a joke. But Harper's eyes didn't waver. "You're used to scraps, right?" There it was. The room fell quiet. Forks froze midair. Even the kids paused their dance. And Brielle, she smiled. She took the plates. She gathered her children. And she walked toward the garage. It was freezing. The smell of oil and cardboard clung to the walls. A folding table sat against one corner, two metal chairs and a milk crate. There were no napkins, no centerpieces, just a roll of paper towels and a plastic fork bent at the tine. Jaden clenched his jaw. Luna looked around and touched her mom's hand. "Is this where we're eating?" Brielle nodded. "Yeah, baby." They sat. They didn't cry. They didn't ask why. They just sat and ate in silence. Until Jaden asked, "Why'd they put us out here?" Brielle didn't know how to answer. She'd spent years bending herself into silence for people who never wanted to hear her voice. Now her children were sitting in the cold with plates on their laps, and all she had left was a smile she no longer believed in. And then the engine. A black limousine, slow and deliberate, rolled into the driveway. Not a client's car, not someone's mistake. Through the dirty window, they watched silhouettes gather at the front of the house. Curtains shifted, curious eyes pressed to glass. But the car didn't stop at the main entrance. It circled and stopped at the garage. Jaden stood up, the fork slipping from his fingers. Luna leaned forward, eyes wide. The door opened. A tall driver stepped out, uniform pressed, gloves immaculate. He opened the back door. A woman emerged, tall, elegant, in a navy wool coat that whispered quiet power. She walked to the garage door as if she'd known exactly where to find it. Brielle stepped forward and cracked open the side door. The woman smiled. "Excuse me," she said, voice steady. "I'm looking for Brielle Carter." Brielle blinked. "That's me, but how?" "My name is Evelyn Rhodes. I'm the founder of Voices Rising. 5 years ago, you volunteered at a shelter in Ridgeview. You wrote a blog series about your experience. Raw, honest, beautiful. I've been following your writing ever since." Brielle felt the world tilt. "I'd like to invite you to be our opening speaker at our National Women's Summit. All expenses covered. We also want to offer you a publishing deal. Your voice matters, Brielle. It always has." Behind her, the lights from the house flickered in disbelief. But Brielle didn't turn around. She looked at Jaden, standing taller now. She looked at Luna, whose mouth was parted in awe. And for the first time, Brielle stood without apology. "I'd be honored." Evelyn reached out her hand. Not a grand gesture, just quiet respect. And just like that, the garage, the place meant to make her feel small, became the place where everything changed. Have you ever been pushed aside by the very people who were supposed to love you? What moment made you realize your worth wasn't theirs to define? Because the woman they put in the garage just got in the limo, and she's not looking back. Read on to see what happens next when Brielle takes the stage and the world begins to listen. The limo was warmer than anything Brielle had felt in months. Not just physically, though the seats were buttery leather and the air smelled faintly of lavender and cedar, but something deeper. It was the warmth of being seen, of finally being chosen, not as an afterthought, but on purpose. Luna curled up beside her, clutching Brielle's hand like she was holding on to something magical. Jaden sat across, stiff at first, then slowly began to relax. His shoulders dropped, his jaw unclenched. He looked not just like a boy, but like a boy who could finally exhale. Evelyn watched them both with quiet interest. "They're good kids," she said. "They're the best part of me," Brielle replied. As the car pulled away from the house, Harper's house, Brielle caught one final glimpse through the window. Her sister still stood frozen, wine glass in hand, mouth slightly parted like someone trying to swallow a truth that tasted bitter. Diane sat beside her, unreadable as ever. And for once, Brielle didn't care. Dinner downtown felt like another universe. White tablecloths, waiters who called her ma'am, a candle flickering in the center of the table like a small, holy fire. But the real warmth came from Evelyn's attention. She asked questions no one had ever asked Brielle before, about the story she told, the pain she carried, the way she tried to love in the cracks. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer fixes, just listened. By the time dessert came, Evelyn slid a thin folder across the table. "Take a look when you're ready," she said. "But I meant what I said earlier. Your story matters." Brielle nodded, too full of emotion to speak. That night, when they got home, Luna was asleep on her shoulder. Jaden helped unlock the apartment, moving with the careful, silent grace of someone used to not waking the neighbors. Brielle tucked her daughter into bed, kissed her forehead, and paused at the door when Luna whispered, "Mom? Yeah, baby. I like the lady in the blue coat." "Me too. She looked at you like you were important." Brielle's chest tightened. "I am." Luna smiled. "I know, but peace never lingers long in lives built on survival." 2 days later, the email came. Subject, Voices Rising Summit, Legal Complication. Brielle read the words once, then again. Her hands trembled. One of the corporate sponsors had backed out. Not just backed out, threatened to pull funding if her name remained on the keynote list. Apparently, someone had flagged her blog post from 5 years ago. The one where she wrote about sleeping in her car. The one where she talked about screaming into her pillow while her kids slept in the back seat. The sponsor had called it concerning, and potentially damaging to brand image. Brielle stared at the screen, numb. Evelyn called 10 minutes later. "I'm furious," she said. "We're not canceling your speech, Brielle. You deserve this stage. But I won't lie to you, it's going to be messy. There will be press. There may be backlash." Brielle was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, "Why now?" "I don't know," Evelyn said. "Maybe because someone from your family decided you don't belong in the spotlight. Maybe they made a call. Maybe they're afraid." Brielle closed her eyes. She wanted to scream, to cry, to curl into the safe dark and disappear. But what hurt most wasn't the betrayal from some faceless sponsor. It was the suspicion blooming in her chest. That someone in that house, the one she left behind, was still trying to keep her small. The next morning, she got a message from Harper. Just 3 words. "Let it go." Brielle stared at it like it was poison. She wanted to throw her phone. Instead, she typed slowly, deliberately. "I already did." Later that day, Jaden came into the kitchen holding a printed copy of the article. "I found this online," he said. "Is it true?" Brielle nodded. "Every word." He looked down at the page. "You didn't look weak. You looked brave." That night, Brielle stayed up late rereading every blog post she had ever written. The raw ones, the ugly ones, the honest ones, and she realized something she had never dared admit before. She wasn't ashamed of her story. She was afraid of how powerful it might be. She opened the folder Evelyn had given her. Inside was a contract and a letter. In Evelyn's handwriting, "You do not owe the world a version of yourself that makes them comfortable. Tell the truth. We'll stand behind you." The next day, she said yes, and the backlash began. Anonymous comments on social media, accusations that she was glamorizing hardship, that she was using her kids, that she was making people uncomfortable. Sponsors withdrew, but other voices rose louder, women who said, "That was me." Mothers who whispered, "I thought I was alone." College students, nurses, cashiers, lawyers, people who had been pushed to the margins and had never told anyone how much it hurt. And suddenly, it wasn't just Brielle's story anymore. It was theirs. Have you ever been made to feel like your truth was too much for the world to handle? Because in the next chapter, Brielle doesn't just step into the spotlight, she burns the stage down. The morning of the summit, Brielle stood backstage in a fitted navy blazer borrowed from a neighbor, palms slick with nerves, heart pounding like a drum too big for her chest. The lights beyond the curtain were warm, humming, alive. The kind of lights she used to think were reserved for people with degrees, connections, clean pasts. Not for women who'd once slept in their cars. Not for single moms who'd clipped coupons and swallowed their pride with every meal. But here she was. Jaden was sitting in the front row, tie slightly crooked, his shoulders squared with quiet pride. Luna sat beside him, a flower pin tucked into her curls, whispering something that made him laugh. And Brielle realized something then, something she hadn't been able to name until now. She wasn't just doing this for herself. She was doing this to rewrite their memory of that garage. Evelyn appeared beside her, her presence as steadying as a hand on her back. "You ready?" "No," Brielle whispered, and then she smiled. "But I'm going anyway." When they called her name, the applause started soft, then grew, like rain beginning to fall on a quiet rooftop. Brielle stepped into the light. She began not with credentials or polished words, but with the truth. "I once ate Thanksgiving dinner in a garage," she said. "Not because I was poor, though yes, I've been that too, but because someone decided I didn't belong at the table." A hush fell over the room, not silence, reverence. "I smiled for my children while we ate on paper plates beside a lawnmower. And in that silence, in that cold, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was done begging. I was done pretending." She told them everything. The humiliation, the exhaustion, the moment she thought she'd disappear if no one ever looked her in the eyes again. And then she told them about the limo. How it didn't save her, but how it saw her. "And that," she said, "was the moment I began saving myself." The room stood when she finished, not out of politeness, but something deeper. Recognition, solidarity, hope. Backstage, she collapsed into Evelyn's arms, laughing through tears. "I think I blacked out," Brielle whispered. "You didn't," Evelyn smiled. "You lit the room on fire." The publishing deal followed. The book, More Than Scraps, became a quiet bestseller. It wasn't the kind of book that got big displays in airports, but it was passed from hand to hand like a secret lifeline. Book clubs, shelters, college dorms. Brielle began getting letters, handwritten, tear-stained, full of sentences that started with, "I thought I was the only one." And then one day, a letter came that stopped her heart. It was from her mother. 2 pages, no return address, written in careful, looping script. It didn't apologize, not really. But it admitted this: "I didn't know how to love you without feeling like I'd failed." Brielle stared at the words for a long time, then folded the letter and tucked it in her drawer. Forgiveness, she'd learned, wasn't always a conversation. Sometimes it was a quiet release. The following Thanksgiving, Brielle hosted dinner in their apartment. The dining table was still too small, so they brought in cushions and served food buffet style from the kitchen. No one wore shoes. No one pretended. There was music. There was joy. There was room. Evelyn came, bringing fresh bread and a bottle of wine that cost more than Brielle's entire grocery bill. She brought flowers for Luna, a writing journal for Jaden. They all crammed together on the floor, laughing over pie and storytelling. At one point, Jaden pulled out his notebook. He'd been writing lately, poems mostly, though he refused to let anyone read them. But tonight, he cleared his throat and read a piece titled "The Table." It was about longing, about watching your mother make something from nothing, about how a garage, once meant to isolate, had become sacred ground. When he finished, the room was still. Then Evelyn whispered, "Your mother's not the only writer in the family." Jaden looked down, trying to hide his smile, but Brielle saw it. She saw all of it. Much later, after the guests had left and the dishes were done, Brielle stepped out onto the balcony. The city lights blinked in the distance. Below, life buzzed on. Cars, sirens, voices she couldn't hear. Luna patted out in her socks and stood beside her. "Did you know," she said, "that most stars we see already died a long time ago?" Brielle looked up. "Yeah, I think I heard that once. But we still see their light," Luna said, "because it takes a while to fade." Brielle wrapped an arm around her daughter. "Maybe we're like that too? Like stars? Like people who thought they'd burned out. But maybe we're just beginning to shine." A week later, Brielle got an invitation, a new keynote. Only this time, it wasn't for a summit. It was for a private gala hosted by a foundation that Harper's husband, Carter, had recently joined. Apparently, someone had recommended her. The invite came with no explanation, no signature, just a handwritten note on the back. "This time, the table has your name on it." She didn't go. She didn't need to. Her table was already full. What part of Brielle's journey stayed with you the most? Comment 100 if this story touched your heart. Where are you watching from? Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. And thank you for being part of Life Stories.